All right, we're doing this today without any notes. You have some, but I don't have any. I had some, but they went away. So,
That's true.
but we have so much to talk about. Hi, I'm Scott Farber, and this, of course, is our living legend from Memphis, former NFL player and current president of the NFL Players Association, Dallas-Fort Worth chapter. I know I'm missing something today from that resume
Well,
because I don't
probably
have
just
it written
friend
down.
of Scott Farber.
And my good friend, he of course is Larry Mallory, host of the Extra Point on this network,
Yes, sir.
obviously co-host of the podcast, the Extra Point podcast here. Larry, there is so much to talk about. I really don't need notes. And I know you came here with all of this football information. I know you're going to tear apart the Bears and Trubisky and everything in the middle of the season on this 100th season. But first, I don't like talking about politics too much because, we don't like to upset the apple cart with people and everything because, we're just people. We're not politicians.
That's true.
We're just part of this. But it's getting difficult every day, isn't it?
It is. It's a kind of a very polarized environment. Interesting enough, we went to the state fair, my wife and I recently, and we took the train, and it happened to be on the same day as they had a MAGA festival, a MAGA celebration, rally down at American Airlines Center. So it was an interesting ride on the train. But yeah, it's a polarized environment right now, and it's almost like what team are you on? The visitors of the home team,
and everybody is so angry. Both sides. And that's what I don't get, why we're so stirred up about all of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't...
That's a good point. I think that,
Why should we all be so angry?
Right. Well, on that ride to us going to the state fair and everybody else with 2020 Trump things on, but there was a sense of cordiality.
Right.
A lot of people.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, honestly. And I think that what we capture in the media to push out to as many people as possible is that negative side, is that challenging side.
Right.
I think there's another side to it. And I think that even people that have some degree of support for the present system that we have in place, all of them are not that totally happy about it, I don't think.
Right.
And what I liked about the situation that my wife and I were in, because it was a pretty good crowd of people going down, was the fact that people were cordial. And people wanted to talk and not necessarily talk about politics, even though they were sitting there with a red hat on.
Well, you would like to think that if there was a car wreck, that you wouldn't think, is he a Republican or is he a Democrat before I decide to help him?
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I think we still have the sense to go help a neighbor or a stranger in time of need.
That's a great statement, Scott. I think American compassion is not dead.
Right.
I think it's still there, and I think that overall, the image, the history, the respect that we have as a nation will eventually come right back.
Well, you know what I related to, growing up in Chicago, going to a Cubs-Cardinal game. When I look out into the stadiums when the Cubs are playing, you see a lot of Cub fans wherever they're playing. Mm-hmm. But when they play the Cardinals, there's plenty of Cardinal fans at Wrigley Field.
Right.
And I mean, you can't get a more bitter rivalry in baseball and the passion with fans. And yet you see the Cardinal fan sitting next to the Cub fan, eating each other's popcorn. Yeah. I mean, that's how I wish it could be for politics, where you could be on a different side, but you don't have to be so angry.
And I think that's an excellent example that you just presented.
Well,
how teams come together, their fans come together. That's an excellent example.
And you might really root for the Cardinals or really root for the Cubs, but when it's over, you look at each other and go, where do you want to go eat?
Yeah. Above all, you like football.
Right.
That's my key. Above all, we love America.
Right.
And America, to me, has to supersede the president.
Right. And whatever happens is going to happen, and the politicians should be able to take care of it, to take care of America for us. Right. And this with getting the public so steamed up, not about the politicians, but it seems like at each other. We're so divided. When you go to dinner now, it's hard to talk about politics.
Yeah.
Because people just get so angry, and all. give me your perspective that you were talking about, because as everybody knows, you lived overseas for many years, and you still have some friends overseas.
Yeah.
What are they telling you now?
Oh, it's a tense situation for them because living overseas, you're representing America, and in most people's eyes, historically, America has been that beacon of hope.
Right.
Now, especially seconded people that are living overseas, working for companies, just as I did, there's a tenseness and a sensitivity that they've never had. A lot of times when you second or you are an expat for a company in a foreign country, sometimes you bring your family with you as well.
Right.
So now and the people I've spoken to, there's a tenseness in regards to how they operate.
Right.
There's some things that Americans are known for, like in the world, most people eat with the fork in the left hand versus the right hand. So now
Americans eat with the right hand.
Americans eat with the right hand, and we.
So you get spotted.
You get spotted.
Yeah.
We like space.
Right.
We tend to talk so that you could hear very loud. Right. Those are elements of freedom. Those are elements of American freedom. Right. And when now they're displayed in foreign countries based upon all of the things that's happening and all the impact that we're having on different countries, people are a little concerned about their families and about their safety.
Yeah. Well, I imagine eventually it will get better. I think eventually whatever is the right thing to do, our politicians will do the right thing. It's just an interesting time. I keep telling my kids that we have never really seen anything like this that's going on. And I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about in the country, the people, the polarization. Yeah. I mean, it really has gotten to the point where it bothers me.
It's unnerving, Scott. You pull up next to cars and you're looking to see, who's next to you now, and it's just not the type of comfort that you and I grew up in.
Well, I just remember one thing years ago when the Bush-Gore outcome of that election was in the Supreme Court. And I happened to put on C-SPAN, of all things, because they were doing the 100 years of the White House, and I thought that would be interesting to see, so I flipped that on. And in the background, knowing that the Bush-Gore thing is in the Supreme Court to decide who the president's going to be, there was Bill and Hillary Clinton sitting with George and Barbara Bush. And you think in your head, these are, the arch enemies in the political world, at least in our mind. And they were sitting and laughing and patting each other. And I go, see, a lot of it is a facade. Behind the scenes, these people are friends. Now, of course, the Clintons and the Bushes did become good friends, which is great. You can have differences in policy. But it just struck me interesting how we were all so polarized then over who should be the president. Right. And here's the outgoing president, and his vice president is trying to be the president, and a former president whose son's trying to be the president, and yet they're sitting there and laughing and having a good time. Yeah. So it kind of told me that how is it behind the scenes with these guys that we think are so mean to each other?
And that explanation is sort of the example that we all live with our neighbors.
Right.
You can't control who lives next door to you.
Right.
But you can be nice to whoever next.
Well, and people do get along because you do have a lot of other things besides politics.
That's right.
To worry about.
That's true.
And if you're a young guy, you got to worry about how you're looking for the girl down the street.
That's a good point.
So those are. Anyway, it's a very interesting time.
It is
that we're living through.
And I think that's a good comparison you made in regards to
the fans,
the Cardinals, and the Cubs. Because we're about to go in the World Series, and I know you like baseball. So
well, somewhere you talk about these athletes and all the money they make, and Bryce Harper left to make his $300 million and whatnot, and he leaves. And Washington goes to the World Series. So did that just really put a damper on some of these free agents now?
Wow, that's a great segue.
But great segue, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And a great question.
Yeah.
The baseball the negotiation for a baseball contract is so much different than the negotiation for a football contract. Honestly, I wish I'd met you earlier and I'd played baseball because you were a baseball guy more than anything else. But I think that the free agent environment and the way that they manage their union, the way that they take care of their former players versus and active players, I mean, from a football perspective, we support them. We love it how the baseball and the basketball situation works, and we hope that with the upcoming CBA that we have from a football standpoint, that we'll move into that positive environment from a labor management perspective.
Now you got in the Larry issues with the NFL Players Association, but you didn't answer the question.
That's true.
You need to be running for politics.
You taught me well.
Yeah. So but do you think Bryce Harper leaving, getting all that money, and you could argue whether he deserved it or not, and I say it's great if you can get the money. That's we live in that capitalistic society, as you always like to remind me. But the Nationals won without him, and they weren't winning with him. So I wonder if that's going to lessen some guys' bargaining power. How important? I could see in golf, you're on your own. In tennis, you're on your own. In baseball, Harper could go 4 for 4 with 2 home runs, and the team wins 15-2. Maybe those home runs didn't matter. Yeah. And then they lose 1-0 the next day, and he goes 0 for 5. Yeah. But at the end of the year, here's my stats, and they're still pretty good. So, then you got to look into, out of all those home runs, how many meant something? Yeah. How many times does a guy hit a home run when the score's already 10-0? And you go, what a laugher we got. There's a 2-run homer. It's now 12-0. Yeah. That home run really wasn't needed, but it counts on his stats. Oh, number 40.
Yeah, that's true.
So I wonder, if you really look into all of that, it should be like, how many times did you hit now he did hit a game-winning grand slam against the Cubs, Harper. I'm not picking on Bryce Harper at all. I'm just wondering if that's going to be a little bit of a damper on free agency.
I don't really, I'll have to research that. I don't really have a direct input on it. Right. But I can say that in baseball, the Texas Rangers are building a new stadium.
Right.
There's 20,000 less seats in that stadium because more people are looking at the games on their equipment, social media, and those kinds of things.
Pay-per-view.
Yeah. And a lot of those owners now are either baseball or football owners. Right. So I don't really see that making that much of adjustments to the free agency environment because their revenue is basically protected based upon how they're looking at society.
Well, I heard a few years ago the Yankees deal was like $500 million a year for the cable TV rights. Right. So with that kind of money coming in, the gate is important, but that $500 million sure helps, I would think.
I would think the gate might be profit.
Yeah.
It's pure profit.
Yeah, that very well could be. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the football, and we always mention the Bears.
Wonder why we do that.
Well, I think back last year, as we all know, they hit the upright and the crossbar on the final kick, not to win the playoff game. Mm-hmm. And there was a possibility that the Bears might have gone to the Super Bowl. And maybe not, but it doesn't matter. They were good. Yeah. Expectations this year was so high. How could Trubisky's play fall so far back? And I wonder, the fact that the offense doesn't stay on the field, does that mean the defense goes out there and goes, I don't even give a shit?
That's a great question.
Because they didn't play well the last 2 weeks, the defense either. They started out okay, but they went back, and maybe it's because they're on the field too long, because they sure were. Or is it, why am I going to put the extra effort in, the extra mile in? How does that play in the locker room when the defense is doing great and the offense is horrible?
Well, with only 16 games a year, right? I think one of the attractions of the NFL is how fast it adjusts itself. Every week, you get a scouting report from a team,
Right.
You make the adjustments that's required to play that team.
Right.
Right. And so either the Bears are not making the type of offensive adjustments that negates a defensive success, or opposite. Because number one, we talked about it. The Bears have a good defense. In fact, I thought the defense was the strength of the organization. But Khalil Mack came into the Bears, which was an excellent addition. But at some point, you're not going to let one player control you for 16 games. They're going to figure out a way to take Khalil Mack out of the game.
Well, it's even like Colin Kaepernick. His very first game he played was against the Bears, and he just tore them apart because he brought a whole new element to the game with the running, and everything. But teams started watching game films, and as the season wore on, he just wasn't running for 30 yards.
Exactly.
So yeah, the adjustments are made, but with the Bears, it's deeper. We were watching Trubisky miss wide open receivers.
Right.
Is it a lack of confidence? Is he reading and hearing all the press going on around him? Is it the locker room where you hear grumblings? I mean, tell me, when you were in the locker room, how did the offense and defense always get along?
Well, and I was in a locker room where our offense was pretty poor and our defense was the strength.
Oh man,
But
you got a bunch of guys that just got mad at you now?
Well,
not
really, because when that happens, what happens in a good leadership locker room,
right,
is that whatever team is playing the best, they attempt to help that team play better.
Yeah,
and they do that in practice.
Yeah,
it's a team sport, and it's not an offensive and a defensive locker room. It's one locker room, so there's more pressure sometimes in the locker room than it is by the coaches on the field.
Yeah, yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah,
Everybody's trying to get to that place and make more money. And at the end of the day, I believe that Trubisky missing the passes and all those things, I don't know if that's a team element or his element.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened before the game. I don't know what happened during the week. But he did miss more passes, and he was not as accurate as he usually is. I guarantee you, during this week of practice, they're going to put in either the type of routes that makes him better or the type of plays that will make him look better. But as the quarterback, and we talk about the importance of the quarterback, as the quarterback, he is that key.
Yeah.
And he was not the key for us the other night.
Well, he came, he had been injured, and, I guess, his left shoulder is opposite from his throwing hand, still isn't 100%. But then I question, how do you play a football game with 54 passes and 7 running plays? I always hear, establish that running game. And here's a guy, quarterback that was injured, so why are you having him throw 54 times?
And especially with a bad opposite shoulder.
That's what I'm saying, and you run it 7. So does that mean that they have no confidence in their offensive line or in their running backs? What could that thinking be? And we're talking about the Bears, but this relates to all the teams.
Well, it really does. And I can give you an example. The Cowboys played the Eagles, and the first 2 possessions were fumbles in the Eagles. On the 20, 30-yard line of the Eagles. So the Cowboys basically had 2 free touchdowns from fumbles. So you're right. Each week, next week will be completely different for your Bears.
Right.
He won't look the same. He'll probably give the ball off to a running back more. I don't know the specifics of the passes, but usually when you have to throw that many passes versus a run, either there's a dominant defensive player that you can't handle, or you've gotten behind in the game to the point where you have to try to catch.
Yeah. Well, that's what I always said, the knock on Cutler, but he was out there heaving the ball because he knows, the defense when he played was not good.
Yeah.
And, he knew that once he leaves the field, the other team is probably going to score again.
That's right.
So,
but that's an interesting statement you made. In that locker room, the defensive players are supporting the offensive players.
Okay.
They're working harder on them in practice.
Okay.
If there's a move that you're getting beat on, a sliding over or a charge and bump, they're putting those offensive linemen through those kinds of techniques so that they're accustomed to them and it won't happen again.
Well, I'm watching that game, and we were out of town, and I was watching the game from the hotel room, And all I could think of is Larry sitting there saying, "Don't worry, there's a Greyhound bus with the next wave of players."
That's right. When one leaves, another one is coming.
Yeah, and there's going to be some guys exiting, from here. Well, now, give me your perspective. I know you played for the New York Giants, but I know you're a big Dallas Cowboy fan.
Well, they are the number one brand in the world.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. The Cowboys, 3-0, 3-3, now 4-3. It's always such an up and down. Is Garrett's job safe? Is he part of the reason that the Cowboys are like this? Or did the Cowboys win 3 games in the beginning against lesser teams, lost to 3 good teams, and then beat the lesser team again? Where are we?
Well, the Cowboys are playing in a division, NFC East, that I have to unfortunately say might be one of the weaker divisions in the league. So starting out this year, honestly, everybody projected the Cowboys or the Eagles, but especially the Cowboys to win the NFC East.
Right.
So that's nothing.
Well, they're going to win the NFC East.
Exactly. Well, let's hope they do, because a lot of the older players are saying, this is the Dallas Cowboys. These are the number one fans in the world. It's the largest brand in the world. Do you have to be motivated to win? Because see, what the Eagles coach said, about we going down there to win this game.
Right.
A lot of people felt that wasn't right. Even some of his people felt, I don't know if that's the right thing to do.
Right.
Because all that did was fire somebody up, and it fired them up. You could tell that they were ready to play. Well, some of the older players think, though, why is it that you got to fire somebody up to win? Well, you're a Dallas Cowboy. You're supposed to go out to win every time.
That's what I was going to say and ask you about. When you go into the backyard, if you and I went in the back here and played basketball, we wouldn't need any motivation to try to beat each other. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. You're right.
I mean,
we start off from that point.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, when I hear about, the clipping on the, on the bulletin board that got somebody fired up, what? A professional athlete isn't fired up? I mean, the kid on the street is fired up.
That's the exact same thing that the Dallas Cowboys veterans are saying.
Yeah.
And especially when they say that, John Nyland said the difference in the old Cowboy and the young Cowboy Super Bowl ring.
Well, yeah, John Nyland, I loved it. When we interviewed him, he looks at me and goes, what do you call a cowboy that's been to the Super Bowl? And the answer is old.
That's right.
That's a great line.
A great line. And he was not paid as much as he'd be paid now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think that you're exactly right, and you hit the nail on the head. There should not have to be, there should be an internal motivation all 16 weeks. You're getting a great salary, a much better salary than a lot of people that are supporting you got. Yeah. And you are the number one brand, the number one sports brand in the world at $4.8 billion.
Larry, I can't believe any professional athlete isn't psyched for the next game. Especially in football, because they got a week. All they're doing is thinking about that next team, the guy that they're going to be facing on the field one-on-one. How are they not fired up?
Thank you. 16. And look at baseball, 100 plus, 90 plus.
Yeah.
Basketball, 100 plus. 16 games you have to focus.
That's right. Yeah, it's amazing. Now let me ask you another question about the Cowboys. As you always say, the biggest brand in the world, the most expensive franchise, extremely popular. Why is it a guy like John Nyland, who is an offensive guard, even though he says everything in the Dallas North 40 was true?
That's true.
And Ed Too Tall Jones, why aren't they in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, you got some great questions today. Because we want Too Tall in there, our relationship, and John Nyland as well. I don't really know why they're not in the Hall of Fame. I know that the type of statistics that Too Tall had just from block passes were not being kept in our day. Those numbers weren't there. So that might be it.
Just the intimidation factor on the field.
At 7.
Just what everybody had to do to prepare for the Cowboys Like before we went on, you were saying now they're double teaming Khalil Mack everywhere on the Bears to lessen him. What did they go through with Ed Too Tall Jones when he played?
Thank you. And
You know, that's not going to show up in the stats, but how important to the team is he that the other team has to focus on him?
I agree. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. We're working hard as a union to try to create as much visibility as we can for him.
Well, once you get him in, we want to go after John.
Well, we definitely
him
will.
in.
We definitely will.
Yeah.
But you know, those historical Cowboy teams had a lot of good athletes.
Oh yeah,
They
amazing.
were tight. They were a team in the locker room and on the field. Everybody, all the teams, no matter what the Cowboys' record was, all the teams, when you come to play Dallas Cowboys, you want to beat them.
Right.
Now, I heard...
They want to beat any team, though. It gets back to what we were saying.
That's true.
But I
true.
understand the Cowboys.
That's true.
Go ahead.
But I was... one of my friends told me a statistic that we need to check out to see if this is correct or not. But he said that the year that the Cowboys were 1-15, to show you how balance is in the NFL, the year they went 1-15, the only victory they had was on the Redskins, who won the Super Bowl that year.
Well, you know, but you know, what that always says to me on any given day, you know, somebody can beat somebody. But I always say you have the Cowboys are the worst team in football that year, and everybody on that team was a superstar their whole life.
Right.
So you know what I mean? So as a team, you're having, you know, who knows what the reasoning is? It could be coaching, it could be a lot of things, but you're still dealing with superstars.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why they couldn't win. I mean, you see that all the time, though, in sports where, you know, there's upsets. You know, LeBron James teams have lost to some bad teams, you know, just during the course of the regular season.
Well, a lot of times, too, you know, when we go out to the Star, especially the older players, we see how the locker room looks and where they eat and where they hold their meetings, and everything is beautiful and clean and new, air conditioned.
Yeah.
And so that does create an environment for players. You know, if they could have seen or been in the environments and you know, when the players in our day were playing, it's nowhere near the type of modern stadium where they play, where they practice.
All right, Larry.
Where the Cowboys practice. When they practice, they come out and the guys already have their cars waiting on them.
Yeah.
So this is boy.
All right. So when I was in high school, we'd go to the old Chicago Stadium to watch the Bulls or the Blackhawks. And it wasn't the best neighborhood at the time.
That's on the west side, isn't it?
On the west side of Chicago there. It was not the best neighborhood. And so I would go with a buddy of mine or buddies. When we go down there, my dad would you know, be very careful. I'll never forget it. One time my dad said, if your tires are missing, drive home on the rims. You know, it was just bad. It's much better now, you know, thank goodness, you know, but it was bad when I was a kid, that area. You'd go in there, you'd get your soft drink, and they'd put a piece of cellophane on top of it with a dirty green rubber band. The guy would have 1 million rubber bands on his arms, and that would be your lid. I remember that. And then we'd go into our seats, and then all the railings, the paint was peeled. It was a mess. Yeah. And we were thrilled to be there. Jump to now. This buddy of mine that I'm talking about that I grew up with happens to live in the Dallas area too. So I got some tickets, and we went to a Stars hockey game.
Okay.
They were playing the Blackhawks. So, and I got these tickets from a client, and they were very good seats. And we go there. What I didn't know is that they came with the fancy parking lot across the way.
Oh, yeah.
And then I walk into the door there, the special door that we had to go through, and I'm in this like huge ballroom. This is at American Airlines Center, and they're serving dinner. And they're cutting the roast beef and all kinds of stuff. And my son Jordan goes off to go he's standing in line getting macaroni and cheese, you know, a typical kid thing. And I yell across to him, and Jordan, are you doing all right? He goes, oh yeah, Dad, no problem, I'm great, you know. And I'm standing there, and they're slicing roast beef from my plate, and I look at my buddy, and I start laughing. He goes, what's the matter? I said, Bob, do you remember what it was like when we went to the games when we were a kid? He goes, yeah, it's a little bit different now.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. I said, Jordan thinks this is how it's supposed
That's
to
right.
be.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I mean? It's a very different world for these games now.
It is.
And
for
all
the
the money
fans
involved.
and for the players.
You know, the tickets were, over $100 a ticket on the thing. When we were kids, they were like 75 cents.
That's right.
And people think I'm lying, but I'm not, because I still have a scorecard from a Cubs game when we were a kid.
And the cost was 75 cents?
75 cents for the
That's
ticket.
pretty
It was
good.
a dime for the hot dog. I'll never forget this. And my dad, to go to the baseball games, would give me $2. And that would be riding the L and buying the ticket and my food, and I'd bring him change.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
And since you're my age,
it's the same.
it was the same price, so you can't say anything.
I was just in the country, you were in the city.
Yeah. So now let me ask you one other thing. I don't know why I told that. Forgive me for telling that long story, but it kind of is interesting to me.
It's a good story, and it compares, though. That's the comparative that we're living through as parents.
Right.
That's
Right. All right. So the Dallas Cowboys, little known fact, got to be the franchise they are. This will make you happy because of a New York Giant. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Do you want to guess what New York Giant made the Dallas Cowboys what they are today? You're going to kick yourself when I tell you.
And it wasn't Tom Landry.
Yes, it was.
Okay, because he was a defensive back with the Giants.
Yeah.
In fact, in the Giants stadium,
If you didn't get that, I would have whacked you. I mean, really, come on.
well, I had to, I'm a little slow. I'm in the okay. I don't have to go through that one.
I have to do that.
I've had my head concussions.
Yeah.
I'm small,
Oh, here we go.
oversized.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom. In fact, I think I shared with you that Tom's picture, man, is all over the Giants'
Sure.
meeting rooms and stuff.
Of course it is. Because look what Tom Landry went and became
That's
after
true.
he was a New York Giant.
That's true. That's true.
The next time we do a podcast, I want you to bring in your football helmet
Okay.
when you play with the Giants.
I definitely
It
will.
looks like the helmets that we bought when we were kids at Sears.
That's true.
I mean,
With the strap webbing
well, it's just
inside.
the little foam rubber patches everywhere, on the inside.
And the objective in practice was to hit with the face and with the heads.
Yeah. Oh boy.
That's how
The
it
times
works.
have changed, thankfully.
Yeah, it has.
There's something else that I wanted to say about that helmet, and I can't remember what it was. But that was really, when I first saw that helmet, that's what I wanted to say. And Larry stole that helmet. Stole it. I don't know if you're past the limitation time,
That's true.
but Larry stole the helmet from the New York Giants. So if they're still missing it, tell me that story. Why'd you steal that?
Well, I wanted to have a memoir, all right?
And they didn't let you guys take your equipment.
No, we couldn't take
What
it
did they
from
do with it?
Sometimes they washed it, but not every time. But they would keep it and then use it for whoever the next players were.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, so I did steal it.
It's
I
a
apologize, but I did steal it.
it's a different world.
It
No, I'm
is.
glad you did, because we've used it on the set of your TV show, The Extra Point.
That's true.
But next time I want you to bring it in so we can look.
I
All right,
definitely
man. That's it for today. Let's do this sooner than later.
Well, honestly, we did pretty good not to have any notes or anything. You were
We
really on
actually
point
had
today.
we actually didn't even have a note of what to talk about today.
And that's why there's so much to talk about. It's so good to see you.
All right, man. Be
I'm
good.
glad to
See
be
you
back
soon.
on schedule.
All right. Take care.
All right.
See you soon.
All right.